Heightened tensions with Iran over an American student accused of espionage. An Iranian court sentencing Princeton grad student and researcher Ziyu Wang to 10 years in prison, just days ahead of a deadline for Iran sanctions. Joining us this morning is former Army commander in Iraq and Afghanistan, Voorhees. Commander, how will this impact relations between the United States and Iran as they stand right now?
Well, you know, this is just a continuous game with Iran. I mean, they have numerous folks that they're holding from the international community, and it's a propaganda thing, it's a pawn thing, it's a leverage thing, and it's not helpful. I mean, at the end of the day, Iran's going to use all of their hostages, particularly the United States citizen hostages, to provide leverage, to give them what they want, and that's room to maneuver, to continue with their programs and their ideology. So it's not helpful at all. Here's
the issue that many people had with the ransom that was paid for those American hostages under the Obama administration. I think the total amount was $1.7 billion, but again, hundreds of millions of dollars sent in pallets of cash overnight on an airplane, which the American people wouldn't know about without the Wall Street Journal. The problem with paying that money is that's what happens, that you pay them for hostages and then Iran expects the same thing. There's Iranian money tied up here in the United States in U.S. banks because it was deemed by our own court system that that belongs to the victims of Iranian terrorism. So do you expect that's what Iran wants, is a payment for this individual and the other ones being held?
Well, for sure. I mean, they're going to try to get ransom, and obviously that goes to, again, promoting all of the different extreme measures that they're trying to take, whether it's the nuclear, increasing their economy. And you're right, you do set a pattern when you start paying for hostages or paying ransom. And I think that that is a very dangerous road to go down. The other thing is I would tell everybody, avoid travel to Syria, avoid travel to Iran, avoid travel to North Korea, because you are going to be potentially used as a pawn in this big game. But the money part of it, as you guys well know, is a big factor in the Iranian ideology and their goals and vision of what they want to do in the future.
Commander, it's Kevin Kelly, and I think you're bringing up a big point, because part of the ransom money, we know, is they take it, they got cash, and they use it to go fund Hamas and actually fund terrorism, but they're also fighting proxy wars in Iraq. How do we handle this situation where they're taking citizens captive, they're also funding proxy wars against us in some areas, we're fighting with them in other areas? How do we navigate Iran and the new paradigm shift that's happening in the Middle East?
Well, obviously, Kevin, good to see you. A very complex situation. You mentioned the proxy wars, and you didn't even mention the Syrian aspect of how they're influencing that in conjunction with the Russians. Navigating it is very difficult. Again, I would start with, you know, citizens need to avoid, citizens of Western democracies need to avoid Iran. That's probably the first step. The other step is just continued pressure and setting standards that will not be tolerated. We're not going to give any more money. We're not going to pay ransoms. We're not going to release funds so they continue to, you know, build up their economy, do the things, and become a strength, because their influence is one thing that not only we don't want, all of our allies in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, they don't want it. You know, you mentioned influence. We're talking down in Yemen also, so it is a very complex web, and they have a game plan, and we need to be very wary of it and not be naive to it.
I always go back to the critical importance of our energy independence in this country. And the more crude oil that we can produce, we can keep prices low. We not only safeguard our own energy supplies from nations that hate us, like Russia, for example, and Iran, but we also have leverage over them in a very powerful, significant way. How important is that, particularly with Iran and its ally, Russia?
Well, I think self-dependence, as you mentioned, Dagan, is extremely important. And again, we can't be naive to the goals and ambitions of Iran, Russia, and other folks, and we can't be hamstrung by us depending on them. That has created a lot of problems throughout not only the Middle East, but throughout the world. I think our own independence, and we have those energy reserves, we need to tap into them, and we need to be resilient. And the other thing it goes to is it creates jobs for Americans that desperately need them in places throughout our country. So I think that the dependence on our own is extremely important, but also it goes to combat money we're sending overseas, how the Iranians are able to influence, as well as the Russians, et cetera, Dagan.
I want to move on to Korea. South Korea's new government looking to tackle the North Korea threat head-on. President Moon Jae-in, the administration there is proposing military talks with Pyongyang to ease tensions and possibly rein in the Kim Jong-un regime's nuclear ambitions. Your thoughts on this? Because engagement, that's a big step for South Korea in terms of engaging North Korea directly.
Yeah, what's important, I think, for everybody to remember here is you have many elements of national power, not only us, but our allies. You have the diplomatic, the informational, the military, and the economic. The fact that the new South Korean president's reaching out to try to begin talks, I think is a good step. Obviously, we have the anniversary of the armistice coming up here on the 27th of July. Technically, North Korea and South Korea are still at war, so that's a good step. But we also need to be very wary that every time that we kick this can down the road of the North Koreans' nuclear ambitions, we're giving them space and time. So I think we have to have a balanced combination of our diplomatic efforts, our allies' diplomatic efforts, our efforts to control and figure out where the money and folks that are actually doing business with North Korea and put pressure on them. But at the end of the day, North Korea cannot get a nuclear weapon. They have a really aggressive and questionable leader that really is not interested in, I don't think, building relations and not interested in his own people. He's interested in his own power, and I think we've got to keep that foremost in mind in these talks. And
this is something that North Korea is involved in. We're talking about cybersecurity and hacking. Oh, yeah. According to new estimates from insurance giant Lloyd's of London, an extreme cyber attack could wreak $120 billion worth of economic damage. That's a price tag even higher than the damage done by, say, Superstorm Sandy in 2012. The study factored in things like system repair costs, customer compensation, reputational damage. Commander, what can countries do to prevent such a catastrophic cyber attack? Because we talk about it, but it seems like neither governments nor companies are prepared to fight this.
Yeah, Dagan, it's a great point. And this is one of the things that honestly kind of keep me up at night, to be quite candid. Because usually the front lines have always been over there or away from our country or beyond our borders. But cyber threats, they're not. It's almost like this, as we move into the future, is the new they are the new front lines, and we need to be very wary of it. And we cannot disregard them as we go about our normal business and don't see it every single day, or we're not faced with it like you are on the battlefield. So I think that this threat is real. Hacking into grids is real. Shutting down potential electrical systems is real. And to your question, we've got to really come together and bring all of our smart folks and figure out how we combat this, just like we combat threats overseas. I mean, we even see how the ISIS has used even the internet to influence people. So a very real threat and something we need to be very concerned with, and we got to come together and be honest with ourselves on it.
Jay Voorhees, thank you so much. Former commander in Iraq and Afghanistan. Jay, take care. We'll see you soon.
Good to see you guys this morning.